Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live.
The Kansas City Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. You only win a Super Bowl 2 times every 5 years, right?
Oh!
The warm-up act is over. Let's bring in Melissa Etheridge, massive Chiefs fan. Melissa,
Super Bowl champion, 2-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
And he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score!
and we'll see you next week. But until then, as always, go Chiefs. Hey, welcome into the Arrowhead Addict podcast. It is Thursday, so that means it's the OG hour. Patrick Allen here with you, along with my guy, the blog father, Adam Best. Off to a little bit of a late start today. If you're watching live, apologies. I had a prior work commitment that I had to do. I'm a busy guy, Adam. I got to try to squeeze everything in. Sometimes it doesn't always work out.
We appreciate you being here, man. Got to make it happen. Whether it's on time or a few minutes late, not a big deal.
That's right. Absolutely. How are you doing, man?
Well, as I told you, I'm moving out to Los Angeles for work, and I bought my place on Tuesday. 24 hours later, I'm wondering if my new place is going to burn to the ground. Just one of the craziest 48 hours in my entire life. But prayers up. Things have been good for me so far. It's just a tragic thing, man. Just a tragic, an unprecedented thing. And I know when people think about Los Angeles, they think, oh, everyone out there is rich and everyone out there it's just a bunch of actors and famous people. Now, there's a lot of working class communities that are losing their homes. And, I would say prayers up for Chargers fans, but they don't even have any fans. So I'll say prayers up for Rams fans. How's that?
Yeah. It's a bad situation. And I hope what a stressful situation it must be to just, get a new property, and now you got to worry about this. And we're thinking about everybody out in California. We've got colleagues out there. It's just a bad situation. Hopefully they're able to get it under control and limit obviously the loss of life and property damage. Just terrible. But
once this gets past, once this clears though, and is in the rearview mirror, we're all going to huddle up for some Chargers games out there. I think that would be a good time, man.
Yeah, you're going to be hosting the tailgate. That's for sure. Out in LA. So we got a great show for you guys today. Absolute mountain of stuff to get to, and we're going to try to move quickly. So there's just a ton of news. I want to start with that, Adam. A million things going on, but I wanted to kick things off with, Black Monday happened. Coaches are getting fired. It's what happens. It's terrible, but it's part of the NFL, and you get paid a lot of money, so the standards are high, and people lose their jobs a lot. But it also meant the end of the Mahomes rules out in Vegas. So it was, the Mahomes rules, we barely knew them. In fact, we never actually got to see them enacted. If you remember, Antonio Pierce, now the former head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, last summer was puffing out his chest because he said he had the recipe to beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs because of that horrendous game on Christmas, which technically the Raiders won last year, but everybody lost watching that football game. It was an absolutely horrid display of attempted football play by both teams, and the Raiders just made a couple fewer mistakes than the Chiefs. But that's it, man. The Mahomes rules. He was talking on the podcast about how they were going to rough up Mahomes and make him feel him, and they were going to get physical with the Chiefs, and they lost both games this year, and he lost his job. What do you think of that?
Let one Antonio Pierce serve as a cautionary tale. Don't talk about 15.
Yeah, man.
You can rave about him. You can rant and rave about him, but don't give him bulletin board material. He's the last guy you want to give bulletin board material. But I think he was already kind of a lame duck coach. The Raiders sort of stuck with him because they didn't have an answer. They didn't have a quarterback, but they're probably going to find a way to get a quarterback. And if they're bringing in a quarterback, they're going to want to bring in a coach and kind of form a more ideal partnership there. And I tip my hat to Antonio Pierce coming into a tough situation and getting the players to buy in. But seeing the way he coaches, I just never thought he's a defensive coordinator, or something like that. I don't think he's really the guy to spearhead a franchise in the way that, say, Andy Reid or Mike Tomlin do.
Yeah, and look, he might get another chance sometime down the line. It's a hard job, and oftentimes guys fail, and sometimes it's because they're not ready. Sometimes it's because when you're looking for a coach, it means things are bad, and you're not usually walking into a good situation. There are very few Andy Reid types out there who can come and take over a 2-14 Chiefs team and then have them win 12 games or 13 games or whatever they won his first season as a coach. So it's very difficult to do, and we'll see what happens. We're having a little bit of fun with the whole Mahomes rules thing, but the guy did lose his job. We're wishing him the best. But the Raiders are actually they're looking at Chiefs people, right? Like, they want to talk to Steve Spagnuolo, and they want to talk to the Raiders asked to speak to Spags, and the Jets have also asked to speak to Spags and Matt Nagy. So Chiefs people are looking at the Chiefs and the success that they're having, and finally they're saying maybe we got to hire some of these guys.
Well, if you want to emulate the culture, pluck somebody from that culture. And what you were hitting on a few minutes ago, how a coach can come into the wrong situation and fail and later succeed. Remember, guys, the Cleveland Browns at one point had Nick Saban and Bill Belichick on the same staff. Maybe the greatest pro coach and the greatest college coach who ever existed were on the same coaching staff. And they weren't the only ones. That was a loaded coaching staff. They could not get it done because they didn't have a quarterback. It is a quarterback league. So, Matt Nagy was coach of the year at one point. He was saddled with Trubisky. I don't think he ever really got a totally fair shake. I know people in Kansas City, he's a bit of a punching bag for some reason, even though he doesn't call the plays, guys. I think this whole, is Matt Nagy or EB, which one is better? It seems like the one that's better is the one that's not in town with Chiefs fans, right? Right. So, but Spags had that brief run with the Rams. I don't think he really got a fair shot either. I would love for Steve Spagnuolo to get another shot. Selfishly, you want him to stay, but if there's anyone deserving of another head coaching stint, it is the only defensive coordinator in league history to win 4 Super Bowls.
Yeah, and look, man, I don't want to lose him either, but the guy, he's earned it, man. I mean, he's done everything for the kingdom these last year in particular. His timely play calling when the defense of personnel wasn't as good, but he managed to help, make the right kinds of calls at the right times to help the Chiefs win. I want the best for him. And boy, wouldn't it be a great story for him to get that opportunity after helping, with another strong defensive team, complete the 3-peat and then ride off into the sunset. And I think Steve Spagnuolo will always have a place on the Chiefs coaching staff, whether that's assistant head coach, whatever, if he ever wanted to come back, if it doesn't work out.
Who do you think would replace him? Would it be Dave Merritt, defensive backs coach? He got interviewed for the 49ers job. Would it be Joe Cullen? Would they bring in someone like Lou Anarumo trying to replicate what Spags does with the game plans? What do you think?
Lou Anarumo. I mean, there's people out there. I think they might look outside the organization a little bit, because I think after this year, the Chiefs are going through a little bit of a change, right? As far as eras go, and Chris Jones getting to the end, Kelsey, and all that stuff. So they might go look at somebody else that they think that their system would fit some of the young personnel that the Chiefs have right now, like Trent McDuffie and the linebackers. Robert Saleh's out there. Got canned by the Jets. He's a good defensive guy. So we'll have to see. But Lou Anarumo, I thought the Bengals were crazy for firing him, but that's a whole other podcast. All right. So Matt Nagy, he's getting interviewed. Doug Peterson, he was let go by the Jaguars. So he's a guy that if Nagy were to get another head coaching opportunity. And now, look, I'll be fair. Matt Nagy got interviewed by the Jets, but the Jets are interviewing me next week. They're talking to everybody. Rex Ryan. I mean, they are not like, they're doing a thorough and exhaustive search. But interestingly enough, they didn't just speak with Matt Nagy. They also spoke with the Chiefs assistant GM, Mike Borgonzi. So he's been the assistant GM with Brett Veach since 2021. He's been with the Chiefs for 16 years in various roles. He supervises the club's college and pro scouting operation. So that's sort of interesting, and it could mean good things. It doesn't mean that Nagy and Mike are going to be like a package deal, but it could mean that. And it's very interesting that they're looking in the Chiefs front office as well, because the Chiefs have had so much success finding gems in the draft. People want a piece of that too. So it's a really fascinating thing. But Chiefs, you keep winning and people are going to come for you. Some other news that we got to get to: the NFLPA named their all-pro team, and 3 Chiefs made it. Did you see this, Adam?
Yeah.
Creed Humphrey, Joe Thuney, and Chris Jones named all pros, all very well deserving. I think those are, obviously what Thuney's doing has been incredible. Creed's amazing. I think you could have made an argument for Trey Smith this year. Obviously there's omissions for 15, Trent McDuffie in particular. Trent McDuffie's one of the top 2-3 corners in the NFL. It's ridiculous. But still a pretty good showing. It's really hard to make an all-pro team. You have to be one of the absolute best. This is in the Pro Bowl.
Correct. And for my money, Chris Jones is the best defensive player in the league. It's him and Myles Garrett, and they're occupying their own planet. Maybe Micah Parsons visits periodically, or Nick Bosa, but those guys are the best of the best. So I'm not surprised to see Chris Jones. There's just nobody that was going to keep him off of that. Even though I wouldn't be surprised if a few voters do the way some of these voters vote. Scratching my head. And then Creed Humphrey, best center in the National Football League, and Joe Thuney being perhaps the best guard in the league. I think he's the best passing blocking guard in the league, sliding over to left tackle and then holding up against a murderer's row of pass rushes. It was Myles Garrett, speaking of, and then it was TJ Watt and Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson, and he held up, and he might fix the Chiefs' most fatal flaw. So you couldn't keep him off there either. I understand not having Mahomes on there this year. I understand not having Travis Kelce this year, but the real travesty is Trent McDuffie. I mean, that's just idiotic.
Yeah, people look at those interception numbers, I guess. I don't know, but I think he'll eventually get the credit he deserves. Sometimes with those types of positions, it takes a little bit of time. It can take time for a center to get noticed. It can take time for a guard or a cornerback sometimes if they don't have splashy interception plays when they're going out there and they're locking people down.
His problem too is there are a lot of shadows on the franchise. People are paying attention to Mahomes and Kelce and Jones and the offensive line and Andy Reid and Spags. And when you talk about the Kansas City Chiefs, Trent McDuffie is the 8th or 9th person you mentioned. That doesn't mean that he wouldn't be one of the best 1 or 2 or 3 players on almost any team in the league. That's just the situation in Kansas City.
Yeah, it certainly is. But congratulations to Creed, Joe, and Chris. And, for those guys that got snubbed, another Super Bowl ring, I think that'll help ease the pain a little bit. And then the last news item I wanted to hit on here is our old pal Tyreek Hill is in the news. You and I were in a group chat laughing about this. He got out of that last game with the Miami Dolphins, and just with one of the most hilarious press conferences I think I've ever seen, and was just like basically saying he wanted out of Miami, that he was leaving the door open for a departure, that he needed to do the best thing for his career. And hilariously, right at the end, when he sort of had been alluding to it, the reporter was like, "Are you saying like you don't want to be on the Dolphins anymore?" And he like looked at them and like sort of like started to walk away, and he was like, yeah, and then bolted off the camera. It was so funny. Now there's been reports of that he hasn't asked for a trade, and that he was just Mike McDaniel was saying, "Oh, he's emotional after the game, and I'm going to talk to him," and all this stuff. But it's pretty clear, right? And I think it has been for a little bit that Tyreek knows from a football standpoint, he made the wrong decision. He's watched the Chiefs win 2 Super Bowls without him. Now, from a financial standpoint, he did great. But him wanting out of Miami doesn't necessarily mean he's going to get out of Miami. They do have an out. They could trade him. They would eat some dead money, but he still has some value. And so if you're the Dolphins and you're looking at your roster and you're looking at Tua and there's questions about his health and all of those types of things, would you consider moving him? And do you think he'll be a Dolphin next year?
I would consider moving him. And I think covering Tyreek Hill is one of the hardest things to do in football, but I think being Tyreek Hill's publicist is probably a harder thing to do than even covering him. I mean, what a nightmare job that person must have.
Yeah.
And man, he has to really regret things right now. I know his family is happy in Miami. I know he's not paying those state income taxes, and he just has, Scrooge McDuck mountain of money, but he has to be looking at the Chiefs. And it's like that Interstellar meme. He's looking through the bookshelf at his younger self saying, no.
Yeah.
Like, why did I do that? Because his legacy would be much different if he was still in the Chiefs. I think people would be talking about him in the same breath as Jerry Rice, but that's not going to happen when he's not winning in Miami. And there's something very wrong with the Mike McDaniel Tua Tagovailoa partnership. It looks brilliant at times, but when they play against good teams or they get into the most pivotal games or in the playoffs, they fall apart. So I just don't think it's going to work out. And if I were that front office and owner, Tyreek Hill is a very valuable trade chip. I'd cash in before it gets too late, especially considering you have Jalen Waddle. You have the heir apparent on your roster. You have Devon Achane. You have enough speed. Malik Washington even looks good. So I would get him out of there and try to get, what do you think he would fetch at this point? A second rounder?
Oh yeah, I think so. For the right team, sure. He's a little bit of a headache, but he's not
third
really
rounder.
He's not really. I mean, I would give a second for him right now. Like if I was the Chiefs. Now, I don't think the Chiefs are going to trade for Tyreek because if you're trading for him, you're trading for his contract. And yes, there's bonus that Miami is still going to be on the hook for. Maybe you work out something with Miami where they take on more of the money, but they are already going to be taking a cap hit. And what's more likely is that he gets traded somewhere for a 1-year rental, and or they extend him to spread out that cap pain, or they rent him for a year, try to use him to make a Super Bowl run, and then see what happens from there. And then maybe he could end up back in KC. So you could see all kinds of teams that would be interested in giving up some draft capital if they have cap space. Justin Herbert doesn't really have any receivers out there in LA. They're in the playoffs this year.
Don't wish that into existence. Jesus.
I don't want it to happen, but couldn't you see both the Chargers and the Broncos being interested in adding Tyreek Hill to their young quarterbacks who are playing well? I mean, what if you're what if you're the Texans and you're like, okay, we've got good receivers, but Tank's injured. We add Tyreek to this situation with CJ Stroud, and then of course there's everybody in the NFC. So I think it would be competitive. I think it would be too rich for the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs would just like it if they could sign him off the scrap heap when he's like 33 or 32 and bring him in, for one last ride.
I think the problem with Tyreek Hill at this point, he's starting to slowly lose a step. He didn't look quite like himself last year. And Tyreek Hill very much wants to be the man. I think that's part of why he went to Miami. It just wasn't the money. I think he wanted to go somewhere where it would be his team, not Pat and Travis's team and kind of his team and Chris's team and Andy's team. So you bring him into a locker room and his skills are diminishing and he still wants to be the man. That's tricky for a team that likes to spread the ball around. That is a tricky situation to juggle. I wouldn't want to juggle it at his price tag.
Yeah, and Lauren Shanks makes a great point in the chat. Patriots would love him. Anonymous Mango says he's going to be a Washington Commander. You could just see you've got a guy like Drake May and you're the Patriots and you're like, look what he did. Look what Tyreek Hill did for, in part, Patrick Mahomes. Look what he did for Alex Smith when Alex Smith was there. Look what he did for Tua Tagovailoa, who people thought was a bust. Well, he showed that, and not every quarterback, Tyreek Hill's not just going to make every quarterback that he goes and plays with good, right? It's just not, they have to be talented too. But those guys proved that with the right weapons around them, they could be more productive than they had been in their careers. So you can understand teams with young quarterbacks want, like Drake May, for his confidence, get a year or two of Tyreek Hill, get him established as a quarterback that can make things happen. So there's all kind of Jaden Daniels. That's going to get us to the Super Bowl. Like, people really think that they're that one move away. If they're a playoff team, they think a guy like Tyreek Hill can put them over the top.
Yeah, and with Drake May, it's not just you want to give him confidence and you want to give him weapons. You want to self-scout. You want to find out as quickly as possible if he's going to be the guy. And with the receivers they were trotting out there this year, you have no clue. You have no clue what his ceiling is because you haven't set him up to succeed. So I think they're going to find a buyer, but I just would not expect him back in Kansas City. That said, I never thought Kareem Hunt would wear red and gold again. So you just never know.
You can never say never. By the way, you're watching the Arrowhead Addict podcast. This is the OG hour. If you're watching on YouTube, do us a solid. Hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed to get all of our content. And if you're interested in becoming a member of the Arrowhead Addict community, check out the link in the description. And I also got to let you know that Underdog is the place to play if you are a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports. With over 5 million happy players and 2 billion won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in on all your favorite athletes' performances. Compete against other players just by selecting higher or lower on 2 or more player stats, and you can win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn every touchdown into a win with Underdog. I love their vulture protection. You get their designated running back to score a touchdown in your pick'em entry. If they get vultured, they're going to rescue your entry. So just download the app today and use our code Arrowhead Addict. That's all one word to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Again, that's the code Arrowhead Addict, all one word to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama, Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona. I'm present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 877-8-HOPE New York, or text Hope New York to 467-369. I stumbled a bit there at the end, but I was pretty quick.
Oh man, Sterling's been sick, so I had Dylan doing this for him yesterday, and I felt like Carson Wentz coming in and running the offense with like little practice. I haven't been through it, and I said New England instead of Nebraska, and had to catch myself. And
yeah, it's tough. It's tough, but I imagine for the listeners, it's sort of a fun bit now. So it's tough to. It's tough to do something like that and work it into the content and make it fun. But I think our trying to speed run it actually has. So you guys will have to let us know if you enjoy it or if it's brutal to listen to, but at least it's quick. Okay. So let's get into some of the content here. We're going to talk playoff concerns in a minute about the Chiefs, just a couple of those. And we're going to talk about the AFC Wildcard and preview and predict those games, at least for the AFC. And then we'll do some reader reviews. So again, if you always want to get your question on the podcast, leave us a 5-star review over at Apple Podcasts. And then we'll power rank some movies. We're going to do the Brett Veach's birth year, 1977. Good year. Some really interesting stuff. I'm excited to talk about some of these films. All right, Adam, let's start off with the top. So since the dawn of the NFL playoffs, teams have been clinching and locking in their seeds and getting, whether it was week 15 or week 14 back in the day, week 16, week 18 now, and not playing their starters the last week of the season because they had absolutely nothing to gain. And I saw, who was it? It was one of the big sports shows, and whoever it was saying the NFL's ruined everything because of week 18. It doesn't mean anything. And I was like, it has nothing to do with how many weeks they play. If they played 18, if it was a 17-game season or a 16-game season, teams are still going to have clinched. And it's too violent of a game. They're not just going to go out there and risk playing for pride. Look what happened to the Packers. And they had a little something to play for. Like, look what happened to the Baltimore Ravens, who lost potentially Zay Flowers for a key playoff game, and a game that they could have beat the Packers, the Steelers without him, right? So that's the situation. So the Chiefs, just like any other team, go out there, and I got to give Andy Reid credit. I was advocating for this for 2 weeks. I was like, rest everybody. I said I didn't want to see Xavier Worthy. I didn't want to see Joe Thuney. And people were like, well, you can only have so many guys inactive. And like, that's true. But you can also not play them. There's a lot of guys who are active on Sunday that we don't see out there. And that's exactly what the Chiefs did. They signed a linebacker 3 days before the game and started him, I think. So maybe they didn't start him, but he was out there. The interior offensive line went out, right? Like they played like 4 snaps and then they were done. The Chiefs and everybody online just loses their mind saying that the Chiefs are intentionally throwing the game. And that's just not true, man. Like the Chiefs ran their second and third string players out. They called the most vanilla game I think I've ever seen Andy Reid call. It was like preseason light. I mean, they had an offensive lineman run a tight end route. Like they weren't going to spend any time game planning against the Broncos, a team that they might see in the playoffs, and show them absolutely anything. And what happened was the Broncos were playing a playoff game. So what do you think's going to happen when a team runs out all of their second and third string players and the other team is going to throw, like Sean Payton, he wasn't holding much back in that game. Even though he knew his team was going to win early on in that game, they were running trick plays. They were throwing the book at Kansas City because they had to get in the playoffs. They didn't want to mess around and have things go sideways on them. But then the internet loses their mind because the Bengals didn't make the playoffs. And everybody's whining about how the Chiefs threw the game because they didn't want to see the Bengals. Have the Chiefs broken everybody's brains, Adam?
They have broken everybody's brains. In particular, I have to go in on Cincinnati and their fan base a little bit. They have main character derangement syndrome. This isn't about you, Cincinnati. Not everything is about you. You guys lost one Super Bowl and you think you run the league. I mean, seriously, did the Atlanta Falcons in 2016 act like they were God's gift to football after losing to the Patriots? No, they did not. I don't know what the deal is with the Bengals and their fans, but it just doesn't make any sense. I think what's going on here with them in particular is that if they're not Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs' kryptonite, they have nothing. They have nothing. They have no Lombardis. Their team is going in the wrong direction. They have nothing to hang their hat on. So they cling to this thought that they are the Chiefs' kryptonite, that the Chiefs are scared of them for some reason, even though the Chiefs have beaten them the last 3 times they played, right? Including the last time they met in the playoffs. So it's really bizarre. And I think people are frustrated with the Chiefs dynasty and how consistent and how great they are. And they find it boring and they find it frustrating. So any opportunity they can to kind of criticize the Chiefs or lash out at the Chiefs, they take it. They take it. I mean, why aren't people talking about Philadelphia? They did the same thing.
Right.
It just, I don't know. And also with the Bengals, you know what? If you're mad at the Chiefs players for not showing up in week 18, how about getting mad at your own players for not showing up for the first 5 weeks of the season, right? Don't go 1-4. If you want to make the playoffs, don't start your seasons 1-4. It's your own damn fault that Zach Taylor and that coaching staff and that front office and that locker room don't know how to start seasons. It is not the Chiefs' fault. The Chiefs know how to start and finish seasons.
That's right. The Bengals went into December, I believe, 4-8 in December. So maybe don't take the first 2 months of the season off, 3 months of the season off. Maybe don't lose to the Chiefs. Maybe don't lose to the Patriots. The Chiefs didn't owe anybody anything. I saw people on Twitter and they were like, oh, well, the Chiefs should try to win every game. No, they shouldn't. No, they shouldn't. They do not. They have one job to do, and that is to try to win the Super Bowl. And everything they do is about them trying to win a Super Bowl. And I have no doubt that the players that were out there were trying. They just had no chance. They had no chance. That was not a starting NFL football team out there, and they didn't have the best plays to run. And the Chiefs earned the right to go into that game and be like, we aren't going to show any of our good stuff, and we're not going to play our best players because we don't want them to get hurt. because our job, they're not afraid. They're not afraid of the Bengals. People are like, oh, they're going to be, talking out of both sides of their mouth. They didn't want to play the Bengals. And then they're like, they're going to regret letting the Broncos in. The Chiefs are going to have to beat really good teams to get to and win another Super Bowl. They know that. They've done it 3 times. So they're not concerned about, I honestly believe this, they're not concerned about who they play. They wouldn't have cared if they somehow won that game and the Bengals got in and then the Bengals would have had to knock off the Bills and then come to Kansas City. Chiefs would have been like, fine. Travis Kelce said it on New Heights. So yeah, look, fans, and look, there are reasonable, normal Bengals fans out there.
Oh yeah.
I saw saying, this is ridiculous. We didn't play well enough to get into the playoffs this year. And we have nothing to say about it. It's just the nuts, like you were talking about, and the other fan bases who are just mad and they think everything that the Chiefs do. I've said this in my rant last week. This is 2025, where if you don't like something, it's either a conspiracy. It's not your fault. It's a conspiracy. Lose an election. It was rigged. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't matter. Like, people online, they're just mad. They're just mad, and nothing. And you can always find somebody to commiserate with you. And it is what it is, right? So that's bleeding over into football.
The thing that's so crazy to me is the Chiefs walked into Buffalo last year in the playoffs, beat them on their home field. Then they went to Baltimore and they beat the Ravens on their home field. The fact that after last year, they would fear any team coming to Arrowhead after they did that on the road last year, it's just nonsense.
Yeah. And I just want to say one thing, because I mentioned politics. God help us. We're going to get 18 billion negative reviews. That election comment goes for everybody. I've seen plenty of, we all know Trump thought the election was rigged. I've seen plenty of liberal people all over social media saying Elon Musk hacked the voting machines. So it's everybody. Everybody is nuts right now. And we need to get some common sense back in the world. That's my shtick on that. So don't get mad at me and go cry into Apple reviews if you're trying to figure out my political affiliation. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about the Chiefs playoff concerns. I just have a couple big ones, and we've already broached this subject talking about the tackle position and Joe Thuney. Do you think the Chiefs? I saw a lot of Chiefs fans who still really thought they were hoping that DJ Humphries would play really well during the Denver game and that he could be the left tackle. I got to be honest with you. My personal opinion, even if DJ Humphrey went out there and was absolute lockdown the entire game, I still wouldn't want him to start the playoff game at left tackle. He's not been there enough. He wasn't out there with Mahomes. It's not the right kind of situation, to evaluate him in that game. And it is what it is. He was there early enough to lock down that spot, and he got injured because he hadn't played football in a billion years. And it is what it is. They would be insane to put him out there at left tackle, in my opinion. Keep Joe Thuney there, but what do you think?
I'm in total agreement. And as fans, we're prone to kind of root for ceiling outcomes, right? And I think the ceiling outcome was either Kingsley Suamataia, Wanye Morris, or then DJ Humphries comes in. One of them blossoms into a really good left tackle, so you can keep Joe Thuney at guard. He is a better guard than he is left tackle, but this isn't about ceiling. It's about floor. And DJ Humphries, he can't stay healthy. He came out there last week. He lost a couple reps really fast. That is not something you're going to see Joe Thuney do. He's going to lose slowly. He's going to be fundamentally sound. He's not going to make mental mistakes. He's going to be consistent, and he has the trust of Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes trusts him, and you can see when those other tackles are out there, that clock in the back of his head, it's accelerated. It's ticking. He doesn't trust his line as much. And Mike Caliendo hasn't been perfect, but I just trust the combination of Joe Thuney with Mike Caliendo in between Joe Thuney and Creed Humphrey more than I do DJ Humphries and his bulky lower body at left tackle. And I had high hopes for him, how he played in Arizona, but he just doesn't look like the same person, same player right now. I think you have to go the safe route. Joe Thuney is going to stabilize that line.
I'm with you. And look, DJ, I mean, he's still there. If you need him and you have to use him, he's still there. Same thing with Wanye, same thing with Kingsley. but it is what it is right now. You didn't have enough time to evaluate him. Maybe if he didn't get hurt, he would have rounded back into form, but that's a lot. They were asking a lot of him to come in and immediately play 60 snaps or whatever. And that's probably why he got hurt, because they didn't have time to ease him back in. And so they were just crossing their fingers and hoping that he could hold up. And it's just really hard, man. Like those hamstrings, we always see, you hear hamstring injuries, they happen all year, but especially at the beginning of the year, especially at training camp when guys aren't stretched out and all that stuff. So it was just bound to happen. And the good news is that he's at least healthy enough to play if they need him. And hopefully he can do a good enough job. But yeah, Tooney is the guy. So I'm concerned about that, but I think it's going to be okay. Now talk to me about Harrison Butker. I'm worried about Harrison Butker, not because it's almost for a similar reason about the DJ Humphrey thing. He's missed a couple of kicks, and he hasn't had that many opportunities to kick field goals since he came back. It's just worked out that way. And so when he missed that one in Denver, I was like, oh man, like he's missed an extra point. He's missed a couple field goals. He's clutch. I'm not worried about him mentally, but like lack of reps, lack of game situations. Are you concerned that, where we're in the playoffs and things are in a razor's edge in terms of margins, that maybe he's just not all the way back in his groove?
No, I'm not. I don't worry about that guy. I mean, it's probably not good radio just to be like, nah, I don't worry about him. But we saw this 2 years ago when the season started in Arizona, and he hurt his ankle and he was kind of hobbled all year and didn't always look like himself when he came back. By the time the playoffs came, he got his body right. He was mentally right. I don't worry about that guy mentally. He's tough. He wants the pressure. He invites the pressure. And Sterling and I were talking about this yesterday. The most under-discussed element of that 13 seconds play is the plan wasn't Tyreek, take this to the house, Travis Kelce, catch a Hail Mary, Mahomes do something. It was just get us close enough for Mr. Clutch to send us to overtime. So I think the team believes in him. I think he believes in himself. He's been through this so many times, and the bye really, really helps Harrison Butker. I know that doesn't give you in-game reps, but he's still going to be taking care of his body and practicing and trying to get his technique, precisely back where it was.
It's a little bit different than playing left tackle, obviously kicker, like he can get his practice reps in. It's not, he's kicked enough in NFL games and in high leverage situations where he should be okay. So just as much as is the small sample size of him missing some kicks since he's come back, it has me freaked out. It's also a small sample size in which he is missing kicks. And so, if he missed those, over the middle part of the season or something, we wouldn't be worried at all. So I'm with you, though. I think he'll be okay. I'm nervous, but I'm just nervous anyway because it's playoffs and we're going for a 3-peat and these games are tight and it's the Chiefs. So we'll see. Before we move on, are there any other concerns that you have about the team heading into the preseason? Receivers, Hollywood, anything else that we didn't cover here?
Just CB2. I'm really rooting for Jalen Watson to come back and seize that cornerback 2 role because the defense just looked different when he was full strength. And I think if we get to the point where at least by the AFC Conference Championship, I think they're going to make it. They always do, but knock on wood, you never know. If he is full strength or close to it, even 80%, I think 80% of Jalen Watson, because of how consistent he is, how tough he is above the shoulders, is better than Joshua Williams and much better than Najee Johnson. So I'm really rooting for that.
It makes me nervous because it's cornerback. And it's just one of those, especially the way that C. Spagnuolo likes to leave guys out on an island sometimes. Like, I don't love the idea of a rusty cornerback because that could mean a score on one play. But I'm looking for them to hopefully maybe work him in that first game where they're maybe playing a team that's a little bit easier for them to handle and kind of get a look at him, see how he looks, and then just sort of keep easing him back in in the AFC Championship game, and maybe let him play 50% of the snaps if he looks good at 15, 20% of the snaps in the divisional round. If he's still looking good, you're good to go for the Super Bowl. But yeah, it's a scary situation. But you got to think, man, the Chiefs are lucky. Like, with the exception of Rashee Rice walking back through that door, which is not happening, the fact that they have a chance, that they got Hollywood Brown back and that they get Watson back is unbelievable luck. And hopefully they can contribute to this three-peat run.
A lot of times who ends up in the Super Bowl, it comes down to experience, clutch, luck, but health is a huge factor every single year.
Certainly is. All right, let's move on to the AFC Wildcard round. We get to sit back, kick up our feet this weekend, and just enjoy football and find out who the Chiefs are going to play. So I just wanted to run through these games really quick, get our opinions from the listeners and from you, Adam, on who you think is going to win each one. We don't need to go crazy analyzing each game, but Chargers at Texans. Now, this is a game where, I think a lot of Chiefs fans think, hey, Texans have kind of backing into the playoffs. They haven't looked great, and the Chargers are hot, and that the Chargers are going to win, and that they could be coming to Arrowhead. I wonder if people are sleeping on the Texans a little bit. I know they haven't looked great, but I think they're capable offensively of beating this Chargers team. What do you think, Adam? How do you see this one playing out?
They just don't look very good. I don't like their offense. CJ Stroud, I'm not blaming him, but he's kind of had a sophomore slump. And I think Bobby Slowick, the offensive coordinator, just he's not doing a good job. Joe Mixon is kind of slowing down. Nico Collins is phenomenal, but with Tank Dell out, no Stephon Diggs, it's just kind of a limited offense. I think D'Amico Ryans and the defense are strong. I just don't feel great about the state of that offense going to the playoffs. And I think the Chargers, I have similar issues with the Chargers. I'm not a Greg Roman fan. I think in the playoffs, when you eventually need to have a really good passing offense to kind of close out these games, that's just not his forte. So I don't know what the hell to do with this game. I do think I trust Herbert and Harbaugh more than what I've seen from the Texans nucleus, but this is a coin flip game to me because of where it's being played.
Yeah, it's at Houston. Chargers are 3-point favorites on the road, so that's a pretty good favorite for NFL terms, but it could be close. I think this one is a one-possession game, and when it's a one-possession game in the NFL, a fumble, a play here and there could make the difference. I'm going to go. I'm going to give the edge to the Chargers. I think the Chargers are win, but I think it's a lot closer than people think. I think it's more like a 60% chance than like an 80% chance. All right, next game here on the slate is the Steelers at Ravens. I think that is that's the second game. You want to talk about not in a good place and packing into the playoffs. Steelers are an absolute mess right now. Ravens are riding high with the running game. It seems like this is another one and done for the Steelers. They may not have the Ravens' Zay Flowers, but I don't think it's going to make a difference. Do you see any chance of the Steelers pulling this one off on the road in Baltimore?
Slim chance. Just because they're divisional foes, and the Steelers have a long history of playing them tight. But the Ravens are on a mission, very well-run organization, great coaching staff. Lamar's a tremendous quarterback. I think the Steelers, they've kind of been found out. Things looked sort of good with that Arthur Smith and Russell Wilson marriage early on. This last month has been brutal. They weren't even able to score on the Bengals. I mean, the Bengals have one of the worst. That's a Bob Sutton defense, right? That Bengals defense. And it's not Lou Anarumo's fault either. It's the guy that did the grocery shopping, not the guy who had to cook. But that defense is trash. So I don't know. The thing with Zay Flowers, though, I don't think it's going to affect him this week. But if they don't have Zay Flowers in Buffalo, they're cooked. I don't think they can beat the Bills or the Chiefs without Zay Flowers. That passing game really relies on him. Mark Andrews is a pretty good player. Obviously, Rashad Bateman has his moments, but without the dynamism of Zay Flowers and his speed, I don't know. I think what I would do without Zay Flowers there is I would stack the box. I would say Derrick Henry and Lamar aren't beating us with their legs. Go ahead, Rashad Bateman, Mark Andrews, and Isaiah Likely. If you guys want to beat us, let's see if you can.
Yeah, I think the Steelers are toast in this one. There's an outside shot because Mike Tomlin's such a good coach that maybe they put in Justin Fields or something. And we've seen Lamar wilt a little bit in the playoffs before, but I think he's over that. I think he's going to perform well. So give me the Ravens. And then the last one, I don't think we need to talk about this for a long time. The Bills, the Broncos at the Bills. Bills have been playing out of their minds. The Broncos rookie quarterback, the Broncos are playing really good football right now, but I feel like the Chiefs sabotaged them a little bit. It's like the last thing they remember is that game at Arrowhead playing against the Chiefs backups and riding high, and Bo Nix not having any incompletions. And I think he's in for a rude awakening at the early on in this one. I think the Bills might get out really quickly and then it's over.
Gosh, I think Orchard Park and Bills Mafia, they're going to be so fired up for this game. I mean, they've just had a bad taste in their mouth for a year. And I think Josh Allen is in that like Clubber Lang from Rocky 3 zone where he just, he is just so bitter about Mahomes and the Chiefs. He has to be. There's a parallel timeline where Mahomes played baseball or something, where Josh Allen has 3 championships and is the new Michael Jordan of football with the famous fiance, and he's getting all the attention. And I just think that city, that team for this game in particular, they're going to be on a mission. I remember the Patriots going in there a few years ago and just absolutely getting shellacked. Was it last year or no, it would have been 2 years ago. I just don't think that's the place you want to play on Wildcard weekend.
Yeah, look, I think both the Chargers and the Broncos are ahead of schedule because of coaching, much like the Chiefs were that first year with Andy Reid, and they don't really have what it takes to compete against a team like the Bills, but you never know. But they're 8.5-point favorites at home, and I think that's probably about how it's going to go. Okay, we're going to keep things moving here. We got to get to some reader reviews really quickly. We're on the road to 400 reviews, trying to get it done before the whole season is over. We are very close. I think we're at 391. We just need 9 more. You guys have been backing our play over at Apple Podcasts. Going to hit a couple really quickly for you. From Creative Whim, Best Chiefs Podcast. Always makes my day when another episode hits. Appreciate you, Creative Whim. That's an awesome. Thank you for your support. Boston T. Marty came back with another one and says, I admit it, I'm an Arrowhead addict. The best Chiefs content available on the planet with a passionate, informed, entertaining, caring, and professional slate of hosts and behind-the-scenes personnel. Patrick, Sterling, Adam, Matt Connor, Matt Verderam, Joshua, Price, Christian, and the list goes on. Don't miss a show. As always, go Chiefs. My man, Boston T. Marty, hooking us up with the review.
Great name, too. Boston T. Marty.
It's so good.
Clever.
So good. Nama and Lily, the Best Chiefs Podcast. The Best Chiefs Podcast, always refreshing to hear you guys. Thank you for all you're doing. Go Chiefs. Thank you for backing our play here on this road to 400. We're so close over at Apple Podcasts. Andre the George, another great name. Great info and entertainment. I've been a casual listener recently, but the episodes cover NFL conspiracy wackadoos, earning my follow and this review. Carl, you are a loser. That's a little bit of an inside joke. If you caught the OG hour last week and heard my rant and monologue on Carl and his conspiracy theories, you got to go back and check it out. Next up is Missouri Freedom, Best Chiefs Podcast. Listen all the time. Helps me keep up with my Chiefs news. Let's go Chiefs. Appreciate you, Missouri Freedom. Thank you so much. And then the last one from Gold 54 Rocket from Iowa. Not Carl is the review. Patrick, we're not all Carls. Apologies expected. For real, though, longtime fan. My earliest memories are Trent Green, but then the dark times. The podcast has really helped me become significantly more educated fan while continuing to be a working adult and father. Thank you. P.S. My best dog friend passed away last year at 6 years old from cancer. And the dog eulogy in 2024 had me in tears driving to work. Thank you for sharing your stories. That's a very meaningful review for me. Thank you. I eulogized my dog Zelda here on the show in 2024. And it was a crazy year for me, not giving birth myself, but my wife gave birth to our child, Rory, and we lost Zelda very shortly after that. So go back and find that episode if you want to hear that, but bring a box of tissues. All right. Before we get out of here, we have got to do Patty's Power Rankings, where we talk movies. We'll have to move a little quick, but that's okay. We're going back to 1977. A really, really interesting year, the year that Brett Veach was born, and a good year for film as well. So we're going to do our top 3 favorite movies, not necessarily the best, but our favorites from the year. Adam, kick us off with number 3 for you.
Yeah, an interesting year because I don't think it has the depth of the previous years we've discussed, but it's super top heavy. For me, my number 3 is a really weird one. It's Eraserhead. I'm a big David Lynch fan. Ever since Twin Peaks, really, when I was super young, probably too young to be watching it, but you find those things out in retrospect. So I don't even want to explain Eraserhead to you guys. You just kind of have to see it. You can't really put into words what David Lynch does on the screen as a director and as a writer. It is unlike anything else in cinema or television. So just check it out. You're likely either to love it or loathe it, but that to me, that's a wonderful kind of filmmaker. He's not just trying to make something to please everybody. He has a vision. He goes for it.
Yeah, I've never seen Eraserhead. I really need to check it out. It's been on my list for a while. Even an evocative, cover art for that one. So, okay, my number 3 here. Where is it? Okay. Is me, I'm a horror guy. I had to go with Suspiria, the original 1979 Dario Argento film. If you are a horror nerd and you want to get into, some of these Italian directors, Dario Argento is the master. Suspiria is just fantastic. It has one of the best horror theme songs ever, actually written by a band called Goblin. And it really casts very, very much in the way that John Carpenter's Halloween score really brings the atmosphere to that film. Goblin's crazy rock song that they made is very chilling. It's one of my favorite horror themes of all time. And this is a movie where it's about a woman who goes to ballet school, and it turns out that the people who run the school are witches. And it's just completely crazy movie, really good, fun special effects, good, like very bright colors. The blood is like almost like paint. It's very artistic. It's incredible. It's spooky. It's freaky. It's a terrific film. They did a remake. I didn't really care for it too much. There was no need to remake Suspiria. So just go back and watch it. But it is 1977. Fantastic Suspiria.
Yeah, I was curious why Luca Guadagnino remade that, because it's just, I mean, maybe the studio asked him to because they thought it was a safe bet or something. Who knows? But yeah. You don't mess with originals when there's nothing wrong with the original, really.
Exactly.
Number 2 for me, and I know the man behind this has become somewhat problematic, but film is a collaborative effort. And there's a lot of different genius in this movie. It's Annie Hall by Woody Allen. Gordon Willis, the cinematographer, is brilliant. He had a co-writer. I'm blanking on the guy's name. Obviously, Diane Keaton gives the performance of a lifetime. I could just keep going on and on. It's edited in a brilliant way. But I just think this movie, in terms of being influential to writers, and you can even see it stuff in modern stuff like The Big Short, like just taking creative liberties and breaking the fourth wall and just doing making creative little one-off choices throughout the movie and not being too rigid with your story choices. Woody Allen was just brilliant at that. And just kind of a landmark movie, and in most years would be my number one, but 1977, as we all know, was not most years.
I'm a big believer in separating the artist from the art. Some people can't do that. I get it. I totally understand. If it affects your enjoyment, it does. And it is what it is. But an incredible filmmaker for sure. And I knew you were going to have Annie Hall. I just knew it as a film buff. So I went with Close Encounters of the Third Kind is number 2 for me. Spielberg. God, this movie's just so good. It's just, I was born in 1983. So, I grew up like all this media was it was like Spielberg time, like all my earliest things that were on video by that point that I watched, and E.T., and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And I love horror and I love sci-fi. So this one was right up my alley. It's so much fun. There's so many incredible scenes in it. Richard Dreyfuss, he's one of my favorite actors of all time. And this one is fantastic. It's a must-see if you like sci-fi, aliens, anything like that. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I feel like it's a little bit underrated, to be honest with you. Like, you don't hear people, like, it was very popular at the time that it came out. That's not something that you hear people talk a lot about, but like, sign me up for anything alien, anything space. Like, you mentioned Interstellar earlier. That's one of my favorite movies of all time. I absolutely love it. So always good for, there's never enough good alien movies for me. And this one is like one of the quintessential. I love Spielberg's style, especially from this time period. And I love this film.
It definitely is underrated. And I think that's probably because it's a bit understated or more unassuming. I'm not saying it like doesn't have a strong plot or whatever, but Jaws, you have the shark. Jurassic Park, you have the T-Rex.
Yeah.
Schindler's List. We all know what Schindler's List is about. I could go on and on. It's
not E.T., right? It's not.
Yeah. It's a little bit, and it's not Indiana Jones or whatever. It's a little bit more of a mystery, and I like that about the movie. It's kind of a deep movie for people who like deep thinking.
Yeah,
number 1 for me. And I don't think this is any surprise. This is the movie that made me love movies, the movie that kind of sparked my imagination in my grandparents' living room. And this is so long ago, it wasn't VHS. It was on beta. The predecessor to the VCR. So I just wore that thing out, man, watching the first ever Star Wars. And you talk to people who are older than us, who are old enough, like our parents, to wait in line for that thing. And they'll tell you it was a phenomenon unlike any other. They were going to see it 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. It just kind of like tapped into the zeitgeist like nothing probably before or since. It's just kind of a one of a kind franchise. And this one, and of course, Empire Strikes Back are really special to me because I just grew up watching them a billion times. And even the Ewoks one, which I have fun with, even though I don't put it on the same pedestal necessarily. What's your number 1?
It's Star Wars as well. Yeah, I mean, how can you not? I mean, this is one of the movies of the time period and of the history of cinema. It made kind of, it made this sort of thing kind of cool. You weren't getting a lot of kinds of movies like this back then, and it just captivated everybody's imagination. And here we are in 2025, and there's more Star Wars content on the way. There are more Star Wars fans that, like myself, who weren't even born when this movie came out. And we're all huge fans of the franchise. So it had to be number 1. I thought it would be for both of us, and it is. So this was a fun one. We'll see what we do next time. It's going to be, next time we do a show together, it's going to be Chiefs will play a playoff game. So
they will.
It's going to be awesome. We got to get out of here, folks. Again, we're sending all of our thoughts and prayers and good vibes to all the people out in California. Please stay safe, and especially the first responders out there, the paramedics, and of course the firefighters who are putting their lives on the line to try to protect people and the property out there. We're all thinking about you, and and praying for some rain. God, let's get some rain out there for goodness sake, and help out. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. If you want to become a member of the Arrowhead Addict community, check out the link in the description. Shout out to my co-host, Adam Best, producer Richard, for getting us up and running, and all of our members and all of you for watching us live. Hit that like button on the way out, and enjoy the football this weekend. We'll see you next week for our regularly slated shows. But until then, as always, go Chiefs.